Okay, that should have the opening slide up. Just kind of nod your head if you see something there. Okay, thank you guys. So that's a interesting thing, Paul, that you mentioned is because this is a subject that I get questions on fairly frequently, and that's being able to trying to figure out how to end up connecting multiple applications up to your transceiver. Guys are always bugging me about, well, I'm running FT8. I need my logging program. I want this and that running, or they're running CW Skimmer and they would need their logging program and some rig control stuff going. Uh, and people are all the time asking me these kinds of questions, how you end up doing that. So as a disclaimer, being that Anna's here, this whole problem kind of disappears in the Flex Radio ecosystem. Flex Radio has put together a really nice system where all of these things are all taken care of in their unified application. Unfortunately, here for us mortals that maybe we can't afford that Flex Radio, we have to deal with the reality about a very fractured society out there where a lot of applications, a lot of things just don't work together very nicely. And when we want to bring together a bunch of applications working on a single transceiver, it's a real challenge. So when communicating with your transceiver, it typically has only one serial port. So you can look at the back end of your transceiver. A newer transceiver, you either have, if it's a lower end one, it's a USB port. If it's a better high end one, it'll have an Ethernet port. So that's how we always communicate, or how we will communicate with it through our PCs, whatever it may be. If we have an older rig, it's likely to be a RS-232 serial link. And that is a problem because all of our computers these days, RS-232 has disappeared. So if you have an older computer, or an older transceiver, you probably need to end up getting some kind of RS-232 to USB converter, and they're very readily available out there. And then that'll get it connected to your PC. Thereby, you can only connect one software applications because, in other words, you have one link coming out of that. USB is not something that you can just share connections with. It is one application connects to that Ethernet or that USB link, and that's it. Ethernet can be different, especially when you get over onto the Flex ecosystem. So we're going to be talking about how we can connect our multiple applications to our transceiver that only has one little connection. So hopefully that'll interest enough of you. So typically what we have, the problem that we're trying to solve is that we have a transceiver that out there. We're trying to connect our logging program. We'd like to connect, most of us run WSJT, and we want to connect there for some kind of contest. FLDigi or CW Skimmer is a really nice thing to end up throwing in there. And it'd be also kind of nice sometimes to have some full rig control where rather than having to poke your way through a half dozen menus on some of these radios, all of that is laid out in a nice flat plane on your PC that you can just poke some buttons or twist some dials or run some things up and down to end up looking at or controlling different aspects of your radio. Okay, so at this point in time, because we're not talking about the Flex system, this whole discussion gets a little bit complicated. So I may end up confusing some people. I really tried making this as simple as possible. And this is a pretty deep subject. And if you got questions afterwards, we can ask more questions, write some notes down, and we'll see if we can back up and clarify what's going on. So the killer thing is that there is no single one application out there that can basically do everything, or it could be able to connect all of our ham programs together to be able to talk through our transceiver. So a key note to remember here and to hang on to is you only get one connections per USB port or a sound port too. This also holds together on sound port. This discussion here is mainly focused on just the USB, and that USB is really nothing more than we're talking in the context of just a serial port, just like what we used to pass for RS-232. So you cannot connect multiple applications to a single USB or sound port. That is an axiom that just doesn't change. It's always there. So we'll look at how we end up handling this. So this is an oversimplified way, but the graph still, or the picture really shows true, is that typically we put some kind of a server or some kind of a translator that will communicate using generally cat commands, and those cat commands really represent a computer aided transceiver. And there's several other translations to that same cat, but generally it's using protocol something like cat. So that yellow line between the transceiver and the server, that's a physical USB connection. And then now inside that server, we have all of these applications, and these applications need to figure out how we can end up talking to the server, which then ends up monetizing things and has one connection back to the transceiver to do all the work. So a lot of that information can and will be cached. It'll be held for these other applications to view and look at, and in some cases modify. So this is the big picture of what we're looking for, is what we're trying to solve. So what all is under the hood in that little server block, right square in the middle? So two guys that are very common, and these are kind of the catch-22 that does almost everything. And these kind of fits that picture that I just showed you real well. OmniRig has been around for a long time. Now you have to be careful that there's a couple different versions of OmniRig out there. And so typically you're going to want OmniRig number 1. There's also another suite of applications called Win for ICOM, Win for Yaesu, and Win for K3 and K4. So obviously the K3, K4 is Helicraft, and Yaesu. The center one is Yaesu, and the one on the left is ICOM. So these are applications that are all honed around one of those 3 rigs. And so let's dig into these guys and see what they provide. So on the rig, this is all you get for a GUI. This is it. Nothing complicated at all. It allows you to support 2 rigs out there. And when it talks about rig type, this is the type that you're going to be connecting to. The COM port is the COM port that you're going to talk to the transceiver, and then your baud rate, and then all the rest of the stuff that you have in there, all relates to that USB connection that you're going to make to your transceiver. The bottom, or the second to the bottom there, polling, this is how fast you're trying to collect information. I think with OmniRig, they only let you get down to about 100 milliseconds is the fastest that you can poll this thing. So OmniRig, it really, all it's doing is tracking frequency and mode. So the things that logging systems need to know is that you need to know what frequency you're on and what mode you're operating in. And that's basically the 2 things. That application, and here we run into a lot of problems with interoperability with different applications, but that software is compatible with WSJT, good old FT8 stuff, Station Master, Log4OM, and I think everybody knows what Log4OM is. The OM stands for Old Man, and it's a really popular logging program. It's also, this thing also gets used on like an SDR Play, that's those little SDR radios, and another guy called HD SDR, which is a full application, which has a lot of other cool extensions that go into that. But again, it's surrounding the SDR type of stuff. Matter of fact, with HD SDR, with that application, you can also take like an ICOM 7300, pair it up with that HD SDR, and have that do all the transmitting. In other words, your ICOM 7300 will do the transmitting, and then whatever SDR radio that you're playing with, it'll do all the receiving of the stuff. Another one, a cool one, is CW Skimmer, and this runs 2 rigs. The main thing that all this guy is doing, he's just a traffic cop passing information back and forth, and you can connect up to, I don't know, 3, 4, or 5 of these. I know at least 4. I've seen 4 of them connected up, applications connected up to OmniRig, and it runs just fine. It is free, so it doesn't cost anything. There's a OmniRig 2 out there, and I keep seeing people getting confused about it. Still does the usual tracking for rig frequency and for mode. Supports up to 4 rigs rather than 2. It's specifically developed to interface with the Swisslog and HD SDR. So it's really a small scope that this thing works in. So it's, again, free. So here's another one, and I kind of like this one. This is Win for ICOM, Win for Yaesu, Win for K3 and K4s. So I have actually played around with the Win for ICOM one, and it works pretty darn well. So it gives you a nice control panel here that you can, sliders, you've got filters, you've got all kinds of stuff that you can play with and set and see what the heck it's doing. And not everybody, some people prefer doing the dials and stuff on this on your radio. This display here tracks whatever you do on the radio. It'll show you what's up there. So it's a very complete rig control. So it goes into all the filters and goes through all kinds of things, keeps you from having to drill down through a bunch of menus to end up doing any tweaking on it. Supports PAN adapters. If you notice on that display before, I had a PAN adapter up there. So it will also give you a PAN adapter on your PC. Supports remote rig control. So if you like running around the house with your laptop and talking on the radio or running FT8, you can do that around the house. You can also take it on the road and head off away from the house, and you can operate your rigs remotely from this application. Good support for third-party applications, can support up to 6 USB ports. And I'll show you some pictures in a little bit on how that gets done. Each USB port behaves like a standalone radio. So each one of those 6 ports that you can connect to, that application thinks that he's talking directly to that radio. Really cool. And it launches, it can also launch up to 6 applications. So you can start this application, it'll bring up your logging, your FT8 application, your JT alert stuff, and all of that can all come up at one time with just one click of a mouse. Very handy. It's well integrated with Ham Radio Deluxe, DX Labs, N1MM, FLDigi, WSJT, N3FJP, great logging program, logging for OMIN, and Logger 32. This is a pay to play, so if you want to buy it, it costs you about $60. They do give you a 30-day full feature evaluation, so you can play with it full feature and figure out if you want to spend the $60 for it after sometime or before 30 days. Okay, this is a screen I really like for third-party application. So here, each one across that top there is a USB port. So you can see that I have Ham Radio Deluxe connected up to port 1. For port 2, I have WSJT connected up to it. For port 3, I have my amp. I have a newer amp that's a solid state that has rig control in the amp, so it also has a built-in tuner. So it clicks in the proper relays for whatever band I am and whatever tune I have set up for that particular band. Really convenient. And you can fill it out with like CW Skimmer and other things on across to the right. And then down below at the very bottom there, this is where you plunk in your stuff for auto launching different kinds of applications. So before I was talking about just a server, just a standalone application that all these other things plug into. And now we're going to look at another set of applications where the lines are blurred. So these are like logging programs or things like Ham Radio Deluxe. That's like a Swiss Army line. Embedded in that thing, you have rig control. You have, we'll get into it, but it has all of this stuff kind of combined, and then it has extensions to do other third-party things, so they can connect off to, or they can connect to these other third-party apps that you may want to end up running. So here's good old Ham Radio Deluxe. This is kind of what I consider the Swiss Army knife of rig control that you have there. So over up on the left, you have a complete set of rig control for whatever type of rig that you may be running. You can also run it has the ability to operate a waterfall in there, a pan adapter. You can see that. Over on the right, it's a little bit blurry, but it has a really nice logging feature, does great logging. And the nice thing it does is that it can keep track of your awards. So it can tell you how many more countries you need for that DXCC. They're doing a 5-band DXC. You can take a look and see what's going on 15 meters, telling you that, oh, I only need 2 more contacts before I can get DXCC on 15 meters. Really cool stuff in there, and how it keeps track of all that stuff. It also handles contesting, but it's not as elegant as one of the other contenders I'll put up there, but it does handle contesting. Okay, down in the lower left, this is PSK, PSK32. So it has a real nice interface there to run PSK32, so you can do all your contacting. You have macros set up in there, and it does all that stuff for you. Really, really nice layout on that way that works. The guy on the right is like for CW, it'll take a huge swath of CW content. It will break it out in those horizontal bars, showing you what it looks like, and then you can see inside those red bars is the text on what that person is sending. So you can look at that, see 3, 4, 5, or a dozen CW QSOs going on at once. And then if you want to work with the guy, you click on him, and away you go as far as talking to him via CW. Really, really powerful app. Let's look at some of the highlights. It has a really good rig control app, logging, tracking awards, LOTW. Very important. Having a logging program that automatically interfaces to Logbook of the World. Handles DX cluster, does an okay job on contesting. It has rotor control. It also has the ability, if you like tracking satellites or tracking the moon, it has all that tracking ability in there to run a rotor controller to do the both the elevation and the azimuth calculations. Digital modes, CW, RIDI, PSK, and there are all tons of derivatives underneath those things. The list just goes on and on. Supports pan adapters, waterfalls, can interface. It has interfaces there to other third-party software, same kind of connection. As far as some of the stuff is, you can do Ethernet, TCP/IP, and most prevalent, most of the stuff is USB type of connections. Very extensive software package. Pay as you play, $100. If you look around for sales on it, you can get usually 30% knocked off of that price, but very impressive package. So the next one up is N1MM. For all of us that have done contesting, especially for the 7QP, we're pretty much familiar with this page. Left is all your data entry page, and then all your hot buttons if you want to do voice announcements, or if you're running digital modes to be able to automatically send out that information in digital context. One of the new things that's been kind of added over on the right, it also has support in there for waterfalls. So, and then when you're connected up with the DX cluster, you can see on top of those signals there, those call signs will be called out. Very, very handy when you're out there hunting for someone, or you want to know what's going on. I'm trying to remember if these things also get color coded. I can't remember. I know I played with it, but I can't remember the color coding on it. But very good piece of software. It's specifically designed for contesting. So it doesn't have a lot of bells and whistles for just rag chewing and general stuff. Rig control is very basic in it. Logging is super great. Does great for all the contests because it gives you all the cues for what the exchange is. It crafts that first window there on how you're going to do the exchanges. So it gives you all the cues for doing that. And it also connects up nicely to a DX cluster. Basic statistics for contest logging. So as you're logging things, it will you can go back and look at that, and you can look at statistics to see how well you did on certain bands. What was your run rate for over time? Really good statistics there. It also has some basic rotor control in it. Digital modes are well supported through third-party interfaces. They have This year, they have really, really beefed up the FT8 interface. That interface to WSJT has really been beefed up. It's a little complicated to set up, but I think it's going to be really important when we get to field day. I'm hoping that we can do the FT8 protocol on field day, because this is such a perfect match, because even the queuing for doing the exchange is embedded into this thing. You can also have pre-recorded messages, like if you're calling CQ and you get hoarse after a while, you can just sit there and punch a button and it'll just play it out. And it does a great job of interfacing to third party. This is free software, free, and it's an incredible suite of stuff. So let's look at what we've done here. And this gets a little bit interesting in that here we have the server, but understand that now all these little guys over here on the right side here, those are virtual USB ports. I did throw in an amp here. So to the server or something within my PC, I have a physical link from my transceiver to that server. I have a physical link from my amplifier for all the grid control to the server. And then inside my program, I have all these virtual links. So we're going to look to see how this is accomplished there, and you'll better understand what the hell I'm talking about. So final missing pieces. You should have S up there. You only, and these are, there's a repeat of what I had said before. You only get one connection per USB or sound port. You cannot connect multiple applications to a single USB or sound port, period. So how do we connect a USB port between two applications? So the trick is we have a patch cable. It's called a virtual USB patch cable. It's essentially, it's a null modem cable, and I think all of us are accustomed to USB type of COM cables that we connect between two devices, and we call it a null modem cable. This is a null modem emulation program called COM0COM. And this COM0COM, there are other names for that. There are other applications that do the same thing. It's just that I really like the price of this one here. The price here is free. Everybody else wants money to do the same thing. So this is what the picture looks like now. So here, that dotted line around there, everything inside that dotted line is all running inside the PC. We know that we can't, inside our PC, we don't have the ability to physically run USB cables. And when we start looking at all these ports, man, the back end of a PC would be honking ugly looking at all these cables, and we could never keep track of it. So we have the ability to create these virtual USB connections. So each one of these guys will have its own physical connection. So let's look to see what that looks like. Okay, so virtual USB patch cables, normally called null modems, used to connect between applications that use serial USB communications. It's free. Other products, it costs you money, but the good old COM0COM is free. So here's a really nice picture at the very top. You have two applications running inside a PC, and you have to think in your head, you really are connecting up. When you connect the two serial ports together, it's really just a physical cable. You notice like over here in application 1, he's connecting to COM2. Remember, we can only have one COM port per physical connection. So it's coming up with a virtual connection here, but there's only one number to it. And then the COM port over on the right, he connects to COM port 3. So I wish I didn't grab the right um, GUI here, but this is basically a picture of what the GUI, what it looks like. So you can go through, you can see down the lower left, you can add pairs to it, and what it does, it gives you a picture of what it looks like. It tells you what COM ports they're being assigned to. If it's an already used COM port, it'll turn red. If it's black, it's good. You can go through there and set up some attributes on how the thing needs to be configured. Some places they need like DTR, data terminal ready. They need that to get passed through it. Some other apps don't care for that at all. Some of them use those like request to send RTS. That will be the keying of your transmitter. So there may have to be some playing with getting that stuff connected up. So really powerful application. So just to end up adding a mind twist, there are some particular situations where you may end up having to have a virtual audio cable. You need audio for both your transmit and receive audio. Even on FT8, it needs it for the sound that goes out. It needs it for the pan adapter for the data that it receives. So that's really important to remember, is that you can get into situations in some configurations where you have to throw in a virtual audio cable. So there's a really nice application out there. This is kind of what it looks like when you bring up your sound manager. And so all it's doing is just connecting like an input sound to an output sound, and allows you your application to connect to a certain audio connection and also remember, audio, it always flows one way. It flows from input to output, always flows that direction. So if you want to get it to another application, the sending application, like for the speaker, it's going to connect it up to the input. And then on the receiving application, it's going to connect over here to the output. And then it'll have the output of that, and it can do its own processing on that. So let's see, did I get, okay, I had another slide in here. I don't see it. I guess I screwed it up. But there's a really cool place called VB Software, and Virtual Audio Sound, Virtual Audio Sound, and they have a freebie that you could use for doing your audio connections. So let's wrap things up. So a common question that is always coming at me is, how do I connect up multiple applications to my transceiver? Hopefully I've kind of answered your question or threw enough information out there to get you thinking about this. Okay, there is no one perfect solution except for Flex. That's strictly for Anna. And they do a really good job. They have one unified suite of software for doing everything that we've talked about. Some solutions are free, some are pay to play. Most have free trial periods, so it's really cool. You can try the stuff out. If it works right, then you can go ahead and decide to buy it. There is a large amount of community information on the web on how to set up and use these applications. So when you want to play with this or you got questions, get out there and do a little Googling. Look at the videos, watch the videos, and you can get enough information to figure out how to configure it and make the stuff work. It's all pretty cool. So likely it will take several tries to find software. So in other words, you're not going to find everything that you want right off the bat. So I think it's really important to try different software, try some different things. So you get an understanding of what you like and what you don't like. And so it's going to be a trial and error before you get something that you feel right, that is right for you. So with that, that's the end of my program here. And if you have any questions, go ahead and liven up those mics there and share some information. No questions?
Thanks, Mike. One thing I wanted to mention is there is a hardware solution out there as well. And from what I can see, it takes a lot of setup and finagling, but it's called Microham, and they offer a virtual serial port router, and it's a combination of hardware and software, but
Yep.
it's got a gangle of cables to make it work.
Yep. Now, have you priced it out?
Oh, it's expensive. It's in the $400 range, plus the cables. So yeah, what Mike had presented is certainly light and fluffy and easy. Even if you pay to play on every piece of application, but this is a if you really love hardware, you know, you might want to take a look at that. But software seems to be a lighter way to go.
Now, Mike, these
Yeah.
are all Microsoft Windows applications, are they not?
The majority of those are. There are, in several instances, there's Mac equivalents. There's very little out there that would be on Unix.
Thank you.
Any other questions, or was I just talking too much? I mean, was this kind of informative?
This opened up a whole new thing for me, Mike, because I've been sitting there closing applications and opening up new ones, trying to choose if I wanted to run, you know, FLDigi and other logging programs, and trying to make it all so that I wasn't talking to the wrong program instead of the radio. You can imagine.
So here's something that's kind of practical. I kind of like the ability to do things remote where I'm not having to set up here in my ham shack all the time. So some of that stuff is okay. I'll tell you, my favorites are is I really like Ham Radio Deluxe. It doesn't do the best of everything, but it has everything in, virtually everything in it, and it does a good job for what I want to do. So I really like Ham Radio Deluxe. I really like that Win4 ICOM application because that allows me to take my laptop anywhere in the house, do my logging, run FT8. I can be washing the dishes or cooking a meal and quickly dry my hands and move the cursor and tap it and work new FT8 like this evening. Just before we came on, Pakistan was on, and I had never got Pakistan before, so that was really excited to get that one there. But the same way, like when I'm out in the shop working out there, it's nice to take my laptop out there, listen along to some of the QSOs that are going on, and if I need to, I have the option to jump in and kibitz a little bit. So So I'll tell you, there's lots of ways of doing that, and I'm just kind of shared a few cool ones to do it.
Very cool.
So Mike,
Looks like Scott joined us.
oh yeah, I had some difficulties getting Zoom to work on two computers, so go figure that one. Anyway, I just wanted to kind of say thank you for that presentation. I definitely would love to try the ICOM. What do you call it again?
A win for ICOM.
Yeah, I'd like to try that. I used to have to have both SDR play going for a pan adapter and run N1MM at the same time for contesting. So because at that time my rig was just the little ICOM 706, so I had to use basically OmniRig to and then I had to get a splitter, a piece of what you were talking about, to be able to use one COM port for multiple applications. There's things called splitters where, or you can create virtual ports, as you know. I don't know how many people here have done anything like that, but that's can be a pain in the butt. I just want to put a plug out now for at least M1MM. If you don't want to go out and buy, say, Ham Radio Deluxe or something like that, M1MM has, as you pointed out, Mike, the feature where you can actually bring up a pan adapter without having to have two separate programs. So you can run N1MM as your contest logger, and at the same time, you can bring up the pan adapter feature, and it will connect with your radio. You have to have the COM port setting at the right baud rate, but once you've done that, it comes up nicely, and you get all the signals on the spectrum, and you can click on the spectrum and so forth to go ahead and select the particular signal you want to listen to, and it will change the frequency of your rig. It does all that, so it's very nice. I discovered that about 6 months ago, so it's a pretty nice feature. I just wanted to say that for a free program, Anyway, thanks again.
Welcome.